My name is Doug Carter, and I've always believed that the devil hides in the details. That's what makes me good at my job in logistics, and apparently what makes me a world-class fool in marriage. But sometimes being observant pays off in ways you never expect. It was a Tuesday evening in October when I found it. Melanie had just returned from another one of her quarterly conferences in Portland, looking flushed and satisfied in a way that had nothing to do with PowerPoint presentations. She'd rushed straight to the shower, leaving her purse and overnight bag scattered across our modest living room like evidence at a crime scene. I wasn't snooping. Not really. I was just moving her stuff so I could sit down and watch the game. That's when her purse tipped over, spilling its contents across our coffee table like a confession. Lip gloss, breath mints, hotel keycard, and there it was. A sleek, expensive-looking adult toy that definitely wasn't there when she left 3 days ago. Still in its packaging with a receipt from Intimate Moments, dated yesterday. The same day she was supposedly sitting through presentations about supply chain optimization. Jesus Christ, Melanie, I muttered, picking up the thing like it might bite me. The receipt showed a purchase time of 2:47 p.m., right when she'd texted me about being stuck in boring meetings all afternoon. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. My wife of 8 years was about to come down, probably wearing that silk robe I bought her for Christmas, ready to tell me all about her productive conference. The same conference where she apparently had time for adult toy shopping but couldn't answer my calls. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of confronting her, instead of starting the fight that would end with her crying and me apologizing for being paranoid and controlling, I decided to have a little fun. I walked out to our garage, past my tools and workbench, to the shelf where I keep my hot sauce collection. Melanie always said it was a stupid hobby, but right now, it felt like divine providence. I grabbed the bottle of ghost pepper oil, the stuff so hot it came with a warning label, and headed back inside. The shower was still running. I had time. I opened the package carefully, coating the toy with a generous layer of the oil, making sure to get every surface. Then I resealed it, making it look untouched, and placed it back in her purse exactly where I'd found it. By the time Melanie came downstairs in her robe, I was settled on the couch with a beer, watching the Red Sox lose to the Yankees. Again. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, that practiced sweetness in her voice that I used to find charming. "Oh, you know. Same old boring routine," I said, not looking away from the TV. "How was your conference? Learn anything interesting?" She launched into a detailed story about market trends and networking opportunities, her voice animated in a way it never was when she talked about actual work. I nodded along, making appropriate sounds, while internally counting down. 3 hours later, I heard the scream. It came from our bedroom, a sound of pure agony that had me jumping off the couch in mock concern. I found Melanie in the bathroom, tears streaming down her face, frantically splashing water between her legs. "What happened?" I asked, the picture of innocent worry. "I don't know," she gasped. "It's burning." "Something's wrong." I helped her into the shower, all the while fighting to keep the smile off my face. "Maybe you should see a doctor," I suggested. "Could be an infection or something." She spent the next hour in the shower, and I spent it downstairs, finishing my beer and feeling more satisfied than I had in months. But that was just the beginning. The next morning, Melanie called in sick to work. She spent the day on the couch, shooting me suspicious glances while I got ready for my shift at Pine State Logistics. I worked as a shipping coordinator, keeping track of deliveries and managing routes, detail-oriented work that had trained me to notice patterns, and I was starting to notice a lot of patterns in my wife's behavior. At work, I sat in my cubicle pretending to review shipping manifests while actually going through our phone records online. Melanie's conference had been 3 days, but she'd made over 40 calls to the same number during that time. A number that wasn't in her contacts but showed up in her call log going back months. I ran the number through a reverse lookup. Jared Sloan, regional manager at Coastal Freight Solutions. Melanie's biggest client, and according to his LinkedIn profile, a married father of 2 who lived in a lakeside house worth more than I'd make in 5 years. During my lunch break, I drove to the Wrong Turn, the bar where half the town gathered to drink beer and share gossip. Ray, the bartender, had lived in Loring his whole life and knew everyone's business better than they did themselves. "Hey, Doug," he said, sliding me a Budweiser without being asked. "How's Melanie?" Heard she was feeling under the weather. "Yeah, picked up something at her conference," I said. "You know how those business trips can be?" Ray's expression shifted slightly. "Conference, huh?" Funny thing, Mike Patterson was telling me he saw her car at the Lakeshore Motel last week. Thought maybe you two were having a romantic getaway. The Lakeshore Motel. 20 minutes outside town, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Definitely not where Coastal Freight Solutions would put up their conference attendees. "Must have been someone else's car," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Yeah, must have been," Ray agreed, but his eyes said otherwise. I spent the rest of my lunch break driving past the motel. It was exactly what I'd expected, a run-down place with peeling paint and a parking lot full of potholes. The kind of place you went when you didn't want to be seen. Back at work, I did something I'd never done before. I logged into our shared cell phone account and pulled up Melanie's location history. The data painted a clear picture: regular trips to the motel, always during her client meetings with Coastal Freight. Sometimes for 2 hours, sometimes for a whole afternoon. But the real kicker came when I checked her photos. She'd been backing them up to our shared cloud storage for years, and apparently forgot I had access. Mixed in with pictures of her lunch and screenshots of social media posts were photos I was never meant to see. Melanie in lingerie I'd never seen before, posing in what looked like a hotel room. Melanie at expensive restaurants I couldn't afford, sitting across from a man whose face was always just out of frame. Melanie wearing a necklace that definitely hadn't come from me, along with a text caption that read, "Thanks for the early Christmas present, baby." I sat in my cubicle, staring at my computer screen, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a whole other life, funded by someone else's money, lived in stolen hours while I worked overtime to pay our mortgage. That evening, I came home to find Melanie feeling much better. She was in the kitchen making dinner, humming to herself like nothing had happened, like she hadn't spent the previous night screaming in agony because of what I'd done. "Feeling better?" I asked. "Much, thanks to you taking such good care of me," she said, giving me a kiss on the cheek that felt like a lie against my skin. I sat at our kitchen table, watching her move around our kitchen, and started planning. If Melanie wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a man obsessed. Not with saving my marriage. That ship had sailed the moment I found her toy. But with understanding exactly what I was dealing with. Melanie thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. Time to show her I'd been studying the board a lot longer than she realized. I started with her laptop. Melanie had always been careless with passwords, writing them on sticky notes and using the same combinations everywhere. Her email password was our wedding date plus her birth year, romantic and predictable. Within minutes, I was reading through months of correspondence that made my stomach turn. The emails between Melanie and Jared went back 8 months. They started professional enough, discussing shipping contracts and delivery schedules. But by the 3rd month, they'd moved into flirtation territory, and by month 5, they were planning their first business dinner that lasted until 2 a.m., according to her location data. But it was the recent emails that really got my attention. Jared wasn't just sleeping with my wife, he was laughing about it, about me. "Your husband sounds like a real winner," he'd written after Melanie complained about me working late. "What does he do again? Move boxes around? Maybe we should get him a job with one of our trucking companies. He could drive while we handle the real business." Melanie's response was worse. "Doug's sweet, but he has no ambition. He's happy with his little life and his little job. Sometimes I feel like I'm babysitting instead of being married." I printed out the worst of the emails and tucked them into a folder I kept in my toolbox. Evidence for later. My next stop was Shelley Morrison, my closest friend at work, and someone who knew half the people in town through her job at the credit union. If anyone had heard gossip about Melanie and Jared, it would be her. "Doug, can I ask you something personal?" Shelley said when I brought up Melanie's increased business trips. We were having lunch at the diner downtown, surrounded by the kind of people who'd known me since high school. "Shoot. Is everything okay at home?" Because Linda Vasquez mentioned seeing Melanie at that fancy restaurant in Camden last month. The one where dinner costs more than most people's car payments. She was with some guy in an expensive suit. "Probably a business dinner," I said. Shelley gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. "Doug, honey, I've known you for 15 years. You're a good guy, but you're not a rich guy. No offense. None taken. So maybe you should ask yourself how your wife is affording fancy dinners and new jewelry on a logistics coordinator's salary." That hit home. I'd noticed the jewelry, a gold bracelet that appeared last month, diamond earrings she claimed were costume jewelry but looked real to me, that necklace from the photos. When I'd asked about them, she'd waved me off with vague explanations about bonuses and sales commissions. "Thanks, Shell. I appreciate you looking out for me. Just be careful, okay? And if you need someone to talk to, you know where to find me." That weekend, while Melanie was at the gym, or claimed to be, I drove to Jared Sloan's neighborhood. I'd looked up his address online, and his house was everything I'd expected. Lakeside property, circular driveway, the kind of place that screamed money and success. His wife's Mercedes was in the driveway next to his BMW. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Jared's wife came out with 2 kids, loading them into the Mercedes. Family trip to soccer practice or music lessons, the kind of normal family activity that Jared was risking for his affair with my wife. Valerie Sloan looked like money. Perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive workout clothes, the kind of woman who got weekly manicures and never worried about grocery budgets. She had no idea her husband was spending their money on hotel rooms and jewelry for his side piece, but she was going to find out. That evening, Melanie came home glowing from her workout, wearing new athletic wear that probably cost more than my weekly salary. She kissed me hello and started talking about her day, spinning elaborate stories about her time at the gym and errands around town. I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the trusting husband while mentally adding up the lies. According to her location data, she'd spent 3 hours at the Lakeshore Motel that afternoon. According to her story, she'd been at yoga class and the grocery store. "How was work today?" she asked, settling next to me on the couch. "Interesting," I said. "We got a new client." "Coastal Freight Solutions? You know them?" Her face went pale for just a second before she recovered. "I think I've heard the name." "Why?" "Just wondering if you knew anything about their reputation." "We like to know who we're dealing with." "I'm sure they're fine," she said quickly. "Most freight companies are pretty standard." Another lie to add to the collection. That night, after Melanie fell asleep, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. I'd gathered enough evidence to confront her, enough to blow up her affair and probably her job, but confrontation felt too easy, too quick. Melanie had spent 8 months making me look like a fool, lying to my face, spending another man's money, laughing about my little life while living a secret one of her own. She deserved better than a confrontation. She deserved a show. The annual Loring Lobster Festival was 3 weeks away, and it was perfect. The whole town would be there. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, everyone who'd known Melanie and me since we were kids. If I was going to expose her affair, I wanted maximum impact. But first, I needed more ammunition. I started with social media, creating a fake Facebook profile under the name Mike Stevens, with a generic profile picture and minimal information. It took 2 days of friend requests and casual interactions before I was connected to enough people in Melanie's social circle to see what she was really up to. The photos told the story her emails had only hinted at. Melanie at expensive restaurants, always carefully cropped to hide her companion. Melanie wearing jewelry and clothes that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Melanie at a spa weekend in Bar Harbor that she'd told me was a girls' trip with her sister. But the real goldmine came from Trina Walsh, Melanie's best friend from work. Trina posted everything, her meals, her workouts, her thoughts on reality TV shows, and apparently she posted about her friend's business too. Some people have all the luck, she'd written 3 weeks ago, along with a photo of Melanie getting into a BMW that definitely wasn't mine. Wish I had a sugar daddy to buy me nice things. The post had been deleted within an hour, but screenshots are forever, and I'd saved everything. I also started paying attention to Melanie's schedule, looking for patterns. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she claimed to be working late or meeting clients. But her location data showed regular visits to expensive hotels, upscale restaurants, and shopping centers I couldn't afford. The woman I'd married 8 years ago had been replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone who lied as easily as breathing and spent money like it was water. But I was about to remind her that every river runs dry eventually. My opportunity came on a Thursday evening when Melanie announced she had to work late again. "Big presentation tomorrow," she said, kissing me goodbye. "Don't wait up." Instead of staying home, I drove to the office park where Coastal Freight Solutions was located. Jared's BMW was in the parking lot, but the building was dark. Whatever business they were conducting, it wasn't happening at work. I followed my hunch and drove to the Lakeshore Motel. Sure enough, there was Melanie's Honda Civic parked next to Jared's BMW in the back lot, hidden from the main road. I parked across the street and waited. An hour later, they emerged from room 237, Melanie straightening her clothes while Jared checked his phone. They kissed goodbye like teenagers, all hands and whispered promises. I followed Jared back toward town, staying far enough behind to avoid detection. Instead of going home to his lakeside house and his wife, he stopped at the wrong turn. My bar. The place where I drank beer and tried to forget about my problems. This was too good to pass up. I waited 5 minutes before going inside. Jared was at the bar, still wearing his expensive suit, looking like he owned the place. Ray was serving him top-shelf whiskey and making small talk about business. "Evening, Doug," Ray called when he saw me. "Your usual?" "Thanks, Ray." I took a seat 3 stools down from Jared, close enough to hear his conversation but far enough to avoid suspicion. Jared was on his phone, talking loud enough for half the bar to hear. "Yeah, the meeting went great, really productive. We should wrap up this contract by next week. Meeting. Right." "You work around here?" I asked casually. Jared looked over, sizing me up. "Coastal Freight Solutions. We handle logistics for most of the businesses in the area." "No kidding. I'm in logistics too. Pine State. We might end up working together someday." "Maybe," he said, clearly not interested in talking to someone he saw as beneath him. "I'm Doug Carter, by the way." The change in his expression was immediate. His face went pale, then red, and he nearly choked on his whiskey. "Carter? Yeah. You know the name?" No, I don't think so." But he did. I could see it in his eyes, the sudden panic of a man who'd been caught. He knew exactly who I was because Melanie had told him. Probably described me as the boring husband who worked too much and never suspected anything. "Well, nice meeting you," I said, raising my beer in a mock toast. "Hope that contract works out for you." Jared finished his drink quickly and left without another word. I stayed at the bar for another hour, chatting with Ray and some of the regulars, playing the role of the oblivious husband while inside I was planning my next move. The Lobster Festival was 2 weeks away, time to start sending invitations. I've always been good with details, but planning Melanie's public humiliation required a level of organization that impressed even me. I created spreadsheets, mapped out timelines, and prepared for every possible contingency. If this was going to be my moment, it had to be perfect. First, I needed to make sure the right people would be at the Lobster Festival. Not just random townspeople, but the specific individuals whose presence would maximize Melanie's embarrassment and minimize her ability to spin the story. Valerie Sloan was at the top of my list. Jared's wife deserved to know what her husband was doing, and she deserved to find out in a way that would make it impossible for him to lie his way out of it. I found her on Facebook and discovered she was friends with several people I knew from high school. A few casual conversations later, I'd planted the seed that the Lobster Festival was the social event of the year, not to be missed. "You should really come," I told Janet Morrison, Shelley's sister-in-law, who worked at the same country club where Valerie played tennis. "It's been such a great year for the community. Everyone will be there." Janet, who loved any excuse to socialize, promised to spread the word among her tennis friends, including, I hoped, one particular tennis friend who had no idea what her husband was up to. Next, I needed to ensure that Melanie's co-workers would be there. Her boss, Patricia Henley, was already planning to attend with her family. But I wanted to make sure that Trina Walsh, Melanie's gossipy best friend, would also be present to witness the fireworks. This required a more delicate touch. I couldn't approach Trina directly without raising suspicions, but I could work through mutual connections. A few conversations with people who knew people, a mention of how much fun the festival would be, and soon half of Melanie's office was planning to attend. The hardest part was making sure Jared would be there. He didn't live in Loring and had no obvious reason to attend a small-town festival. But I had an idea. I created a fake email account and sent a message to Coastal Freight Solutions, posing as a representative of the Loring Chamber of Commerce. The email explained that we were looking for local businesses to sponsor booths at the festival, offering excellent networking opportunities with potential clients throughout the region. The response came back within 2 days. Coastal Freight would be happy to sponsor a booth, and Regional Manager Jared Sloan would personally attend to represent the company. Perfect. With the guest list secured, I turned my attention to gathering the evidence I'd need for the main event. The emails and photos I'd already collected were damning, but I wanted something more immediate, more visceral. I bought a small digital recorder, the kind private investigators use, and started carrying it everywhere. My opportunity came the following Tuesday when Melanie announced another late work meeting. I followed her to the Lakeshore Motel and waited in the parking lot. When she and Jared emerged from their room, I was ready. The recorder picked up their conversation clearly as they walked to their cars. "I can't keep doing this," Melanie was saying. "Doug's been asking questions about my schedule." "He's not smart enough to figure anything out," Jared replied. "Besides, what's he going to do? Guy works in a warehouse and drives a 10-year-old pickup truck. He knows he's lucky to have you. Still, maybe we should be more careful." "Relax, baby. After I get this promotion next month, I'll have enough money to set you up in your own place. Then we won't have to sneak around anymore." "What about your wife?" "What about her? Valerie's got the house and the kids. She'll be fine. Besides, she's been spending my money for 15 years. Time for someone else to enjoy the benefits." I had to grip the steering wheel to keep from getting out of the car and confronting them right there. Instead, I sat in the darkness, recording every word as they made plans for their future together, a future built on lies and betrayal, funded by money stolen from Jared's family. But the conversation that really got my attention came next. "Speaking of Doug," Jared said, "my buddy at Pine State mentioned they might be downsizing soon. Your husband's name came up as someone who might be let go." "Really?" "Yeah. Apparently he's been distracted lately, making mistakes. Wouldn't surprise me if he's gone by Christmas." Melanie laughed. "That might actually work out perfectly. If he loses his job, he'll be desperate to keep me happy, less likely to ask awkward questions. And if he does get suspicious, who's going to believe him? Guy's going to look like a bitter loser, making up stories about his wife's successful career." They kissed goodbye, and I watched them drive away in opposite directions. Jared toward his lakeside house and unsuspecting family, Melanie toward our modest home where she'd lie to my face about working late. I sat in the motel parking lot for another hour, listening to the recording and planning my revenge. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd never fight back. In 5 days, at the Lobster Festival, I was going to show them how wrong they were. The morning of the Loring Lobster Festival dawned clear and crisp, perfect October weather that brought out half the county. Main Street was closed to traffic, lined with booths selling everything from fresh lobster rolls to handmade crafts. The smell of butter and seafood filled the air, mixed with the sounds of families enjoying a perfect fall day. I'd been up since dawn, making final preparations. The digital recorder was in my jacket pocket, loaded with the conversation I'd captured at the motel. My phone contained screenshots of Melanie's most damaging emails and photos. In my truck, I had printed copies of everything, insurance, in case technology failed me. Melanie was in a great mood, chatting excitedly about seeing friends and trying the new lobster mac and cheese booth. She'd dressed carefully for the occasion. New jeans that probably cost more than my work boots, a cashmere sweater I'd never seen before, and those diamond earrings that definitely weren't costume jewelry. "You look nice," I said as we walked toward the festival. "Thanks." I wanted to look good for the photos. Trina's bringing her new camera. Of course she was. Trina Walsh, social media queen, and the biggest gossip in Melanie's office. If I'd planned this myself, I couldn't have asked for better documentation. We spent the first hour playing the role of the happy couple, sampling food and chatting with neighbors. I saw Jared Sloan near the craft booths with her 2 kids, looking perfectly put together in the way that only rich women can manage. She had no idea her world was about to explode. Jared arrived around noon, dressed in expensive casual clothes that screamed, "I'm too important for small-town festivals, but I'm slumming it for business." He set up at the coastal freight booth, shaking hands and passing out business cards like a politician running for office. I watched Melanie's face when she spotted him. Her cheeks flushed, and she unconsciously touched her hair, the same gestures I'd seen her make when we were dating. But now they were for someone else. "I should go say hello," she said. "Coastal Freight is one of our biggest clients." "Sure thing. I'll grab us some drinks." I watched her walk over to Jared's booth, noting how her posture changed as she approached him. More confident, more flirtatious. They shook hands professionally, but I caught the way his thumb stroked across her knuckles, the way she leaned in closer than necessary when he spoke. Time for phase 1. I pulled out my phone and started recording, then walked close enough to hear their conversation. "You look incredible," Jared was saying, his voice low enough that the other people at his booth couldn't hear. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Melanie replied. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come to something like this." "Are you kidding? Chance to see you in public, watch you pretend we're just business associates? It's kind of exciting. We should be careful. Doug's around here somewhere. Let him watch. Guy probably doesn't even realize what he's looking at." I had enough. Time for the main event. I walked back to the center of the festival, where a small stage had been set up for announcements and the lobster eating contest. The microphone was open, available for anyone who wanted to make a community announcement. My hands were steady as I climbed the steps. 8 years of marriage, 8 months of lies, and countless hours of planning had led to this moment. "Excuse me," I said into the microphone. "Can I have everyone's attention for a minute?" The crowd began to quiet, faces turning toward the stage. I spotted Melanie near Jared's booth, her expression confused, but not yet alarmed. Jared Sloan was closer to the stage, holding her daughter's hand while her son ate a caramel apple. "My name is Doug Carter, and I've lived in this town my whole life. Most of you know me, know my family, know that I'm not the kind of person who likes to make a scene." Murmurs from the crowd. Melanie was pushing through people now, heading toward the stage, her face pale. But sometimes, a man reaches a point where he has to stand up for himself, even if it means airing his dirty laundry in public. "Doug, what are you doing?" Melanie called out, close enough now that I could see the panic in her eyes. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the speaker system, a trick I'd learned from helping set up equipment for previous festivals. For the past 8 months, my wife Melanie has been having an affair with Jared Sloan from Coastal Freight Solutions. I have emails, photos, and recordings that prove it. But rather than tell you about it, I thought I'd let you hear it in their own words. I hit play. Jared's voice filled the air, crystal clear through the festival speakers. He's not smart enough to figure anything out. Besides, what's he going to do? Guy works in a warehouse and drives a 10-year-old pickup truck. He knows he's lucky to have you. The crowd was silent now, hundreds of people listening to my wife's lover mock me in his own voice. I saw Valerie Sloan's face go white, saw her grip tighten on her daughter's hand. Melanie's voice came next. That might actually work out perfectly. If he loses his job, he'll be desperate to keep me happy. Less likely to ask awkward questions. Then Jared again, and if he does get suspicious, who's going to believe him? Guy's going to look like a bitter loser making up stories about his wife's successful career. I let the recording play for another 30 seconds, capturing their laughter, their casual cruelty, their complete dismissal of me as a human being worth considering. When I finally stopped the playback, the silence was deafening. That recording was made 4 days ago in the parking lot of the Lakeshore Motel, I said into the microphone. The same motel where my wife has been meeting Mr. Sloan twice a week for the past 8 months, using money he's been stealing from his company's expense account to pay for their affair. I saw Jared pushing through the crowd now, his face red with rage and embarrassment. But it was too late. The damage was done, witnessed by half the town and recorded on dozens of phones. "Doug, stop this!" Melanie screamed. "You're making a mistake!" "The only mistake I made was trusting you," I replied into the microphone. "But I'm done making that mistake." I stepped down from the stage and walked away, leaving my wife and her lover to face the crowd alone. Behind me, I heard Valerie Sloan's voice, high and clear. "Jared, is this true?" I didn't look back to see his answer. I already knew what it would be. I spent the rest of the festival at the wrong turn, nursing a beer and watching the fallout unfold through the bar's windows. Ray kept the drinks coming and the questions to a minimum, understanding that some moments require silence more than conversation. The first wave of people started trickling into the bar around 2 o'clock, friends, neighbors, and co-workers who wanted to offer support or satisfy their curiosity. Word traveled fast in a small town, and by the time the festival officially ended, everyone knew the story. "Hell of a thing you did out there," said Tom Bradley, a guy I'd known since high school. "Took guts." "Took stupidity more like," I replied, but I was smiling when I said it. Shelley Morrison showed up around 3, sliding into the booth across from me with a look that mixed admiration and concern. "So," she said, That happened. You okay?" I considered the question. Was I okay? My marriage was over, my wife had been publicly humiliated, and I'd probably made myself the subject of gossip for the next decade. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." "Good. Because Melanie's been calling everyone she knows, trying to do damage control. According to Trina Walsh, she's claiming you doctored the recording. Let her claim whatever she wants. I've got 8 months of evidence backed up in 3 different places." Shelley grinned. "You really thought this through, didn't you?" "I'm good with details." The real fireworks started around 4 o'clock, when Jared Sloan walked into the bar. He looked like hell, his expensive clothes wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his face showing the aftermath of what had clearly been a very unpleasant conversation with his wife. The bar went quiet when he entered, every conversation stopping as people turned to stare. "We need to talk," he said, walking straight to my table. "I don't think we do," I replied. "You have no idea what you've done." "Sure I do. I told the truth. In public, with evidence." Jared's face was getting redder by the minute. "That recording was illegally obtained. You were stalking us. I was sitting in a public parking lot. You two were having a conversation loud enough for anyone to hear. Nothing illegal about that." I could sue you for defamation. I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. With what? Everything I said was true, and I've got the evidence to prove it. Besides, you'd have to explain to a jury why you were at that motel with my wife twice a week. You bastard! Jared lunged forward, but Tom Bradley and two other guys intercepted him before he could reach me. Ray came around the bar with a baseball bat, making it clear that violence wouldn't be tolerated. I think you should leave, Ray said quietly, before this gets worse. Jared looked around the bar, seeing nothing but hostile faces. Whatever support he might have expected from the community had evaporated the moment that recording played. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, it is, I replied. Your wife knows. Your company's going to know when they audit your expense reports. The whole town knows. It's over. He left without another word, and the bar erupted in conversation. I bought a round for the house and settled in to hear what everyone else knew about Jared and Melanie's affair. Turns out, I hadn't been as oblivious as I'd thought. Half the town had suspected something was going on, but nobody had wanted to be the one to tell me. The expensive clothes, the mysterious jewelry, the sudden interest in working late, it had all been noticed and discussed, just not with me. We didn't know how to bring it up, admitted Sarah Chen, a woman I'd known since elementary school. What do you say? Hey, Doug, think your wife might be cheating? You could have started there, I said, but I wasn't angry. I understood their position. Around 6 o'clock, my phone started buzzing with text messages. Melanie trying to reach me, alternating between anger and pleading. We need to talk. Come home. This is insane. You're destroying our marriage over nothing. I can explain everything. Please, Doug. I love you. I turned off my phone and ordered another beer. The final surprise of the evening came around 8 o'clock when Jared Sloan walked into the wrong turn. The bar went silent again, but this time it was respectful rather than hostile. Valerie looked like she'd been crying, but she held her head high as she walked to my table. Mr. Carter? I'm Jared Sloan. I know who you are. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Don't be sorry. I'm grateful you had the courage to tell the truth. She sat down across from me, ignoring the stares from the rest of the bar. I wanted you to know that I've already contacted my lawyer. Jared will be served with divorce papers tomorrow. I'm sorry for your kids. My kids deserve better than a father who lies and cheats and steals money from his own family. Her voice was steady, controlled. They deserve to know that actions have consequences. She stood up, then paused. I also wanted you to know that I've already called Jared's corporate office. They'll be conducting an audit of his expense reports first thing Monday morning. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter, for having the guts to do what needed to be done. After she left, I sat in the bar for another hour thinking about the day's events. My marriage was over, but it had been over for months. I'd just been too stubborn or too scared to admit it. At least now it was ending on my terms, with the truth exposed and justice served. Around 10 o'clock, I finally headed home. Melanie's car wasn't in the driveway, and the house was dark. I found a note on the kitchen table, gone to my sister's. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. Then I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator, sat down in my living room, and started planning the rest of my life. For the first time in months, the future looked pretty good. 3 days after the lobster festival, Melanie came home. I was in the garage, organizing my tools and listening to the Red Sox lose another game when I heard her car in the driveway. She'd been staying with her sister in Portland, presumably plotting her comeback strategy. Based on the determined set of her shoulders as she walked toward the house, she'd decided on the direct approach. I didn't go inside to meet her. Let her come to me. She appeared in the garage doorway 10 minutes later, looking like she'd spent considerable time on her appearance. Hair perfectly styled, makeup carefully applied, wearing the blue dress I'd always said was my favorite. the dress she'd probably worn on dates with Jared. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening." "Not here. Inside. Like civilized people." "I'm comfortable here." She sighed, the sound of a woman who'd decided to be patient with an unreasonable child. "Doug, I know you're angry. I understand that. But what you did at the festival was cruel and unnecessary." I set down my wrench and looked at her. Cruel and unnecessary. That's an interesting way to describe telling the truth. You humiliated me in front of the entire town. You humiliated yourself. I just provided the soundtrack. Her composure cracked slightly. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're being sarcastic and mean, and it's not like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you thought. I know you better than anyone. You're a good man, Doug. A kind man. The kind of man who forgives mistakes and works to save his marriage." I almost laughed. Even now, caught red-handed with 8 months of evidence, she was trying to manipulate me. Trying to make me the bad guy for not being understanding enough about her affair. Is that what we're calling it now? A mistake? Yes. A stupid, terrible mistake that I regret more than anything. Which part do you regret? The lying? The cheating? Or getting caught? All of it. I regret all of it. She stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. Another gift from Jared, probably. But we can work through this. Couples do it all the time. We can go to counseling, rebuild trust, start over. Start over, I repeated. That's interesting, because according to that recording, you and Jared were planning to start over too. In a nice apartment he was going to rent for you after he got his promotion. Her face went pale. That was just talk, fantasy. It didn't mean anything. Really? Because he seemed pretty specific about the timeline. Next month, wasn't it? Doug, please. I love you. I've always loved you. Jared was just a distraction. A stupid midlife crisis that got out of hand. A midlife crisis that lasted 8 months and cost him about $20,000 in hotels, restaurants, and jewelry. How do you know about the money? I smiled. Because I'm not as stupid as you and your boyfriend thought I was. I've been tracking every expense, every lie, every hotel room. I know about the spa weekend in Bar Harbor that you told me was a girls' trip. I know about the necklace he bought you for your birthday, the one you said came from your sister. I know about the credit card he gave you for business expenses. Melanie sat down heavily on my workbench, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking. You've been spying on me. I've been paying attention. There's a difference. For how long? Since the night you came home from your conference with a souvenir you didn't expect. She looked confused for a moment, then her eyes widened. The toy. You did something to it. Ghost pepper oil. Seemed appropriate, given how spicy your business meetings had become. You could have seriously hurt me. You could have seriously hurt me too, but you did it anyway, for 8 months. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of betrayal and broken trust settling between us like a physical presence. What do you want? She finally asked. I want you to pack your things and leave. This is my house too. Actually, it's not. The mortgage is in my name, paid with my salary from my warehouse job. The job you've been mocking to your friends for months. I never mocked you. Doug's sweet, but he has no ambition. He's happy with his little life and his little job. Sometimes I feel like I'm babysitting instead of being married. Your words, Melanie, from an email to Jared dated 3 weeks ago. She closed her eyes. I didn't mean it. Yeah, you did. And that's okay. Because I'm done being married to someone who sees me as a burden to be managed instead of a partner to be respected. So that's it? 8 years of marriage, and you're just throwing it away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. She tried a few more approaches. Tears, anger, promises of change, threats of legal action. But we both knew it was over. Had been over since the moment I found that toy in her purse, maybe even before that. By evening, she'd packed 2 suitcases and loaded them into her car. She'd be back for the rest of her things later, she said, when I was more reasonable. I hope you're happy, she said, as she stood in our doorway for the last time. I think I will be. After she left, I called Shelley and told her the news. Then I called my lawyer and started the divorce proceedings. Then I opened a beer, sat on my couch, and enjoyed the silence of my own house. The next morning, I got a call from Patricia Henley, Melanie's boss. Doug, I wanted to let you know that we had to let Melanie go yesterday. The audit of her expense reports showed some irregularities that we can't overlook. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Because between you and me, I think you did us all a favor. We'd been noticing some problems with her work lately, but we couldn't prove anything until now. What kind of problems? Missing client meetings, incomplete reports, using company resources for personal business. We think she's been distracted for months. After I hung up, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Melanie had gambled everything, her marriage, her job, her reputation, for an affair with a man who was planning to dump her anyway. And she'd lost it all. The final piece of news came a week later, when Ray called to tell me that Jared Sloan had been arrested for embezzlement. The corporate audit had uncovered years of fraudulent expense reports, not just the money he'd spent on Melanie, but a pattern of theft going back to when he first got promoted. They're saying it could be $50,000 or more, Ray said. Guy's looking at serious jail time. I hung up the phone and walked out to my garage, where I'd been spending most of my free time lately. I had projects to finish, things I'd been putting off during the months when I was too distracted by my failing marriage to focus on anything else. As I worked on rebuilding an old engine, I thought about the events of the past few weeks. My marriage was over, my wife was unemployed and facing potential criminal charges as an accessory, and her lover was probably going to prison. Some people might call it revenge. I preferred to think of it as justice. Either way, it felt pretty good.